Blaze.
Welcome back to the next part of this Truth and Rhythm episode. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. Also become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you so much for your interest and support. Enjoy.
But I really idolized Junie in my Dayton days. You know, I really.
Did you ever meet him?
Oh yeah. We were the same age, so yeah, you know, I met him and hung out with him and stuff when he was a player. So, yeah. He came out maybe the year before me in high school, so yeah, you know, we were on talent shows and stuff together and stuff. So I knew him even before he was with Ohio Players. But just what he did, I really admired. And then when I saw what he did when he went with Clinton, I said, oh, I knew this guy was a genius. he's really proven it now. So it's like, you know, there's a. You know, Sugarfoot mentored us. You know, me and Rock and Larry Hines. We always went by his house and stuff. And he let us come by his house. He played us. We were broke, you know, so he played us the latest stuff that was out. You know, he always had a great stereo system. You know what I mean, and have the latest hits. And he mentored us. You know, he took some young guys under his wing and taught us. You know, he taught him different things on the guitar. A lot of people would really not know how great a guitar player Sugarfoot was. You only look at what the Ohio Players did on stage, you would have no idea what this guy was capable of on those 6 strings on that guitar. That cat could play.
Yeah, I think he's just underrated overall.
But nobody knew. You know what I mean? He could do stuff to hang with any of those jazz fusion guys. But that didn't have anything to do with what they did, so you wouldn't see it on stage. You know, I mean, he did what they did on stage. You know, if you went by his house, he could show you stuff. And it's like, oh, he's the first guy I saw doing the sweeping thing before any of those got, you know, Vi and all those guys that came around later in the 90s, 80s and 90s and stuff. He showed Hines that stuff, you know, back then in the 70s.
Wow. I heard he was quite a character, though, too.
He was just a nice, great cat that mentored us at his house. He was, you know, he never, you know, there was nothing ever out there. I think he knew he was dealing with some young guys, and he dealt with us, just that. A lot of people wanted to show us not just musical stuff, but how to be professionals, you know, because we were young and stuff. So they were, you know what I mean? They did that, you know, with us. So I'm so happy that I grew up in Dayton.
Did you? I don't know if you saw it just a couple weeks ago. I had Merv Pierce on from the Ohio Players.
I saw part. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
He ended up in Australia, huh?
Yeah.
No, I went to elementary school with him too. He was only 1 year older than me. His brother was in my same graduating class. So they actually lived on the same street. I think they lived on Oak Ridge or right off Oak Ridge, just like blocks away from me. So I saw him every day in elementary. I don't know when he became Merv. He was Marvin. You know? Yeah. Junie was Walt. You know, was Walter. You know, so I don't know when some of this stuff had just happened. You know, you got the Ohio Players and you got these nicknames, but I did. You know, I knew all of these people before these nicknames came about. So,
you never got a nickname, huh?
Now we didn't give each other nicknames in Platypus. I mean, for a while we all had Islamic names. You know, we decided that we kind of all did that for a while, but we didn't do a lot of. Yeah, people just changed their names for some reason. Well, I didn't really do too much of that. Carrie, he changed his name so much that I just told him I'm not calling. By the time he got the Jackie Boy, I said I'm not calling you. You know, he was Carrie, Kareem, uh, uh, you know, maybe a few others in there, but we got the Jackie boy. Especially after the Muslim thing, right? You used to Kareem. Then you're gonna have a name with boy in it. Like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not participating in that with you. I'm not going there. So, but there was a lot of changing names. Hines was always really spiritual. He was always looking for, just like guitar, the same thing. He was the same thing, always hunting and learning to do more on that instrument. Again, nobody, a lot of people would not know how great a guitar player he was. They'll never know now. You had to be around him every day to know what he was capable, what those fingers were capable of doing. And he was always searching for something spiritually, to be a better person. Always, you know what I mean? So he went through all kinds of, and I went through a lot of them with him. He used to say he had to have somebody in the group, go with him to the different things that he would discover and stuff. And so, but he had to respect that to somebody who's always trying to be a better person.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Not just like a lot of people only hunting out the dollar. He was always hunting what else is there to do on these instruments to make me better, to make the group better. How can I find something that'll make me a better person? And even now, John Stone, the guitar player, most people, they have no idea what he's capable of. I mean, he's I hear his demos and stuff. He said he, as a producer, what he's capable of creatively is amazing. I think he may be the most creative, the strongest creatively out of all of them, Jerry Johnson.
I think particularly in R&B and funk bands, so many of the guitarists are far beyond what you might know, because the music kind of straitjackets them a little bit.
Yeah,
and
they so much they can choose from. Keyboard players too, really, if they choose to. We had a keyboard. We did have a keyboard player for a while, but you probably know him because he ended up playing with Slave, Ray Turner. And you would be this guy. We would just sit around when he was playing with us. He would just sit around and play some stuff. So he's a prodigy of some sort. I mean, you just wouldn't know from Slave or whatever from the funk stuff, but he could just, class because he's trained. I mean, he could. I saw him do stuff where his fingers were over top of each other. I mean, I don't even know what he was doing, but he's just one of those kind of guys. Musically, Ray Turner is unbelievable. I really wish he could have gone with us because he would have been our keyboard wizard because there's nothing he couldn't play on the keyboard. No style of music that Ray Turner could not play. Nothing. So if he had been with us and when we had finally gotten some money and we could have gotten him all the various types of keyboards and stuff, he would have been hanging in there with Rick Wakeman and Keith Emerson every inch of the way, believe me. Every inch of the way. But you got to be in a band with somebody hanging out with them every day, to know what they're capable of doing. Most people just don't. They only see what you did on records, which is great, but that doesn't necessarily tell you who they are as a musician.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they get at least a chance in a concert environment to have a little spotlight and show a little of that.
I think that's why Yes did what they did on the Fragile album. They all got their piece to do. Wakeman played Bach or something. I mean, they all did their, they all had their little space and stuff to show what they were capable of. So, and Platypus was that we were just from this self-contained, the singing group, singing group backup band. Everybody just grew into this other. Same with Rock. I watched him. He wasn't even a bass player at first. The first thing we did in 8th grade, he was a rhythm guitar player playing his brother's guitar. He owes being playing bass to me. I bought a bass. He told me not to do it because I was too skinny. My fingers weren't strong enough to hold the bass strings down, but I bought it anyway. And at one point, the bass player, our bass player, his stuff was there, but he never would show up. He was just never there. And suddenly we didn't have a bass player. So I owned a bass. So Delbert played the bass with us for a long time. And he just got tired of doing it. He's like, I'm a guitar player. I'm not doing this anymore. But my brother Lloyd will play. So that's how that happened. So, so he wasn't even a bass player at first. He was a guitar player. He ended up playing bass because our bass player wasn't there. His brother got tired of doing it, and I owned the bass, which he could do. And then, but again, he and Hines always went searching through finding these different people at schools and stuff. I would always see them with this stuff. They weren't just like with records. People just get together with records. They found these stuff with scales, and you know what I mean. They were always searching out, how can I get deeper into this instrument? What all will it do, and what can I do with it? You know, and we had a drummer. He quit all the time. But you ever hear Jerry Napier?
Not sure.
Brother Bruce Napier was one of the trumpet players.
Yeah, right.
But Jerry Napier, Jerry woodshed. He went from being some guy that was just one of those drummers that everybody kind of like, whatever, you know. He's not very good. He woodshed it with those albums, and he used to do rolls on his kick drum. You know what people do now with double kick drums? He did it with one foot. I mean, the musicianship of people that I've been around is just ridiculous. But we played a talent show once at Dunbar High School, and somehow a whole bunch of people ended up backstage. And I looked, and there was about 30 people crowded around Jerry watching him play. They didn't know why. They just knew something. They were seeing something that wasn't regular. You know what I mean? We were just playing. We were playing Chicago or something, but he was playing. But he was, you know, doing that jazz thing. He was, you know, had to go to hi-hat just on his foot. You know, he was playing a bunch of stuff, and it's, you know, they knew they were watching something that was out of the ordinary. So we always had these cats coming in and out of the band that was like that. That were just phenomenal, but for one reason or another, it couldn't have the money to own it. You know, we couldn't own a keyboard kit, and Ray didn't have a keyboard for the longest time. He ended up playing with Jerry and Cindy Floyd and stuff and everything. But for the financial reasons that we didn't have the band that we ended up with, that we could have ended up with, for, you know, or, you know, Jerry, he's like to quit a lot. Curdy was it was amazing that we found this guy who heard music like us, right? You know, that already knew all this rock stuff, knew the Yes stuff, could play all of it. And even that was by accident. During the hiatus that I told you about, the Platypus was in, the Four Corners was in, we were in Dayton. It was suddenly just the work stopped, and Stokes went and worked at Rolfe as a counselor, and I don't know what Floyd did, and Jerome went back to Monsanto, and we just weren't doing. We're still a group, but we weren't doing anything. You know, just Hal Davis came back in between this time and stuff too. We just weren't working anymore. So just the band, me and the band were finding things to do, little gigs that we could just do, you know, and so at one point, Carrie and Otis Stokes and Ronnie and two other guys and Curdy, and they had a band. They had taken over the mantle of the Bad Bunch. Shelby and Bruce Mills and all those guys had left and gone on to do other things. But Otis kept the name of the Bad Bunch. And so, but what happened is, coming back from a gig one night, they got in in an accident. One of the guys died, and the other guy's Larry Henderson. The other guy, the guy I told you about, Tommy Henderson, that was the first one to write a song in Dayton that we knew of. His little brother, he was just really messed up in the hospital. So me and Ronnie Jones had both been in the band, different versions of the Bad Bunch at one time. Told them, well, look, you guys got all these gigs. We'll help you finish them, you know, for the summer, because Four Corners was on hiatus. Jones hadn't been doing anything. We'll help you finish these gigs. You know, I'll stick with you to Four Corners get back together. So we worked with them, and we did these gigs, playing the same places. Dayton bands played, Kentucky and Indiana, and, you know what I mean, and other parts of Ohio. And doing this, you know, we all got to be really close, and I learned what people's taste was in the band. And I learned even the stuff that we were doing was just covers, the same stuff that everybody did, you know, R&B bands cover stuff. But Curdy knew it could play all of this Yes stuff, you know. And so when we finally got back together, Four Corners, like I said, we played Roundabout at the Palladium. Without even knowing, we had the sheets, you know, written down in pieces of paper. Somehow our drummer just wasn't, you know, he wasn't the technical thing. I mean, even at the end, the beat was turned around, and that he just wasn't into that, you know. And that's where we were going. And I didn't know what was happening with them, but there wasn't really going to be it. Once me and Jones left, there wasn't really. Larry was still ill. There wasn't going to be a band, really, you know. So So I was like, I told the guys, I said, man, I just finished playing the summer with this kid. He's ridiculous, you know. So I entered. Sure enough, boom, the best combination of three cats ever. Hines and Rock and Curdy. I mean, it was just immediate. You know, I mean, just sometimes chemistry is just what it is, and it was just immediate. So that was that's one thing that happened. The other thing that happened was Jerome, his wife had gotten pregnant again, so his family talked him to do the right thing and stuff. So he left the group, you know. So we had to replace him. At first we had this whole thing. We were gonna replace him with a white guy, right? We wanted to be rock so much we figured we'll get a couple of white guys. we couldn't find any in Dayton. So I was like, you know,
not even on that rich side of town you told me about.
no, we couldn't find anybody that could sing. That we found some people who auditioned who wanted to do it, but they couldn't. They were just white. They couldn't sing like us. You're gonna have to be able to sing like us. You know what I mean? So, and we couldn't find anybody. So, and I told Stokes and Floyd, I said, you know, I just sung all summer with Carrie. I said, you know, he knows he can do whatever choreography we're still doing. His ear is on as anybody else's. You know, he'll know how to sing these songs immediately. I was like, why don't we? I kept saying that as we kept auditioning. Eventually, they heard me, and we got Carrie. And then what happened is, Otis decided, well, why don't I opened up the show for you guys? You know, on the band set is have a singer. That was still going on there a little bit. You know, the thing. Most bands back there was a time in Dayton where Huntsy and Entertainers, the Ohio Hustlers, all these groups were like reviews, and they had the band would be the thing. Then they had the singer, like Huntsy, he was the main guy, the singer. We also had Lenny Williams, and then had Floyd and Shelby and Tommy Owens and Capri. So it was like this thing. James Brown started it. You know, I mean, we had Malva, what's her name, and the Flames. You know, so you know everybody would have their own part of the show. So Otis was like, why don't I open up the show for you guys? So he became part of the Four Corners thing. So we had that. So about this time, we decided the Michael Jackson thing came out. We decided we're going to LA. Curdy and Otis were still in their senior year of high school. So me and Stokes, I don't know how we pulled this off. We went to the two different high schools and talked to, I don't know how we put it off with the parents, let alone talk the schools into it. But we talked the principals into allowing them to come to California with us if they sent their work back each week. I wouldn't have done it if I had been the principal or the parent. You know, I get the parents were like, well, you know, the guys are all family in it. You know what I mean? So it's like Otis's brothers in there. Curdy's mother knew, you know, we had been there with them that whole, you know. So I kind of get it. They knew he was going to do that one way anyway. Might as well let him do that. But I don't know how we talked the two principals. It was good that we knew them. One at Curdy's school had been our principal at Raw, and the other, you know, had been vice principal or something, you know. And Stokes had worked with him too while he was working there at Raw. So, but still, I don't know what they were thinking. To say, okay, yeah, leave school early, just since you send your work back every week. You know, but we left, we came out here and they did it. They sent their work back every week. You know, I mean, and they went back and they marched in June. You know, they didn't do the thing, the musician, I don't need school. You know, they did it. They did what they were supposed to do. They went back and marched in June. It's just, all of this is just, even now in saying some of it, I can't believe it happened. You know, it's just, the Dayton thing we would all do is, and every band ended up doing this, we would rent a van, pull the mileage thing off of it, right? You know, and just have enough mileage on it to look like we drove around town. And put the equipment in, put a mattress over top of the equipment, you know, 3 up front and 4 or 5 in the back or whatever. We drive to Kentucky, Indiana, wherever we were going, you know, Florida, we didn't care. We, you know, hook up the mileage thing back when we got back in town. But that's what we all did. So, I mean, if you can't get any closer to anybody than that, than freezing in the back of a van over top of some equipment, looking somebody that close to the face, you know. And we did that all the way. We did, not only did we do it in the tri-state area. But then even when we left town going to L.A., we did that. We did, Kansas and then all the way to L.A. That's
That's
how
paying dues, man. That's paying dues.
we almost didn't make it. We had a we also rented we had a Ryder van and a U-Haul trailer. And Stokes convinced us somehow to go through Colorado, even though we knew that was the wrong thing to do. Everybody was saying no, we should go south and then cut west. But he's looking at the map like it's just flat. It's like, but Colorado's it's the Rockies. It's like I'll be coming around the mountains. Use that song. So we're freezing, going around in circles and stuff. We come into one spot in the Colorado Rockies, and there's no railing. And I don't know if Curdy or Carrie was driving. They both of them used to drive the most. They hit a slick, right? And the car and the van and the trailer jackknifed and started sliding off towards the mountain. And I remember Otis is funny. It's the only time that you ever get a chance to say this in real life and mean it, but it wasn't going to work. Otis opened up the door and said, "This is it." But we couldn't jump out because the door that the side of the van was is the same side that was going off the mountain. If the van would just run, if we had jumped out, the van would just run us over, right? We stopped about 2 or 3 yards from the edge of the mountain. I mean, there was no railing. And you could look down. You know how at Christmas time people would make these models of, with these trees and these houses, the way down the houses look like little, you know what I mean? That's how it looked. The stuff that we could see was so far down that, we wouldn't have made it anywhere near that far anyway, but all you could see was palm trees and snow. So, I mean, 2 or 3 yards from dying, or we wouldn't be talking about this conversation. So, it's just that kind of stuff. Just all these stories.
Wow.
All this stuff constantly. You're taking your life in your hands when you decide I'm gonna go and ramble across the United States of America, in a van. I mean, it's the first time we flew down to Florida, us and the Ohio Huskies. The second time when we went back as Four Corners with Rock and Huntington, we drove down the same way, the van, Otis and Curdy and everything. And that's a long drive. You know what I mean? So and the reason we didn't make it like a little tour is because this is still 71, 72. We not that far out of the civil rights movement that you don't fear the South as a black man. Right. So we weren't thinking about messing around with Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia and all of that stuff. So we're just going, to Miami Beach basically. And Miami was okay. It was more the South than the rest of it. Miami Beach is something totally different. So when we ended up playing on the Gulf side more, to Tampa, the staff of the little towns over there and stuff. But that's a long drive. And on the way back, we played. We opened up for the Whispers in Mobile, Alabama. That's the first time we met the Whispers.
So they knew you by the time Solar came around.
But they didn't remember. They didn't. No. We remember, but they didn't remember some group that opened up for them. I only meant to Wet My Feet was the tune that they had out there. It's just funny working with these groups. Used to sing. We sung their song. The night that they didn't play, we actually, because it was in our show, we played it. And one of their other singers who's not with them in Lavelle took his place, Gordy, I think it was that thing. He said, "Oh, you guys did a nice job on our song." But you meet all these people that you sing their songs in clubs forever. The Spinners, Tavaras, Gladys Knight, the Whispers, and then you meet them and you're actually like telling them this song flat. So it's so bizarre.
Yeah.
It's like, why are they even listening to me? It's like it's so bizarre and stuff. But like I said, all these people ended up being such great individuals that it's a pleasure to know and stuff. But you run into all these folks. I mean, I didn't see him, but Stokes ran into when we were in Florida the first time, ran into Butch Tavaras and them. They were working someplace on the beach, Miami Beach, and he met Butch because Butch was married to Lola Falana at the time. And Stokes went to that show, and he met him. So I mean, we were always meeting these folks, the different people that You just never know what's going to come out of it. I mean, you know, the moment, they ended up being Ray Goodman and Brown and stuff. So I mean, so they were friends, people that we knew for a long time and stuff. But and Othus, Sonny's brother, Othus, saxophone player, he ended up playing with them. And Skip McDonald and Tootie for a while. And then I think Doug Wimbush.
Yeah, we just lost Matt LeBlanc. I don't know if you, not Matt LeBlanc, Keith LeBlanc.
I mean, these people. I mean, so it's like that are part of your history, and it's like but you just never know. You never. I never thought. I never even knew. I didn't think one day Sylvia was going to have out pillow talk. You know what I mean? Later on,
How
but
about that as a kid? Yeah.
I didn't know that she was Sylvia and Mickey. At the time that we met, I didn't realize that was her. That she had out hits in the '50s. I didn't know that. I didn't even know that was her from. So you just don't realize these things. Later on, you meet people, and when you see them again, it's something different. Different things that have happened in history, and it's a different thing. So it's like even when I joined Lakeside, and we would go on tour we wouldn't go on tour. We went out and played every week, different promoters and stuff. But you see all these people again, that you came up with and stuff. But it's different because nobody has out hits anymore. For starters, you're all retro at this time and stuff. But you've all worked together during different times. Now you're in the third era of working together after the hit. There was working together back in the day in clubs before anybody had any hits. There was doing different tours together when people had records out, and now then there's again, after. It's like so much history with these folks. You know what I mean? You just bust out laughing. We talk about, you remember so and so at such and such a club back in, and you're talking about, with some of them you can go back and talk about the '60s. You know what I mean? So it's just amazing to be able. You never know. Going back to meet, now I met a lot of people at the Ebony Club, at Club Ebony. I mean, I saw Bootsy there for the first. I saw Gerald Brown and his brother. Gerald, who ended up being in Shalamar, and I met him and his brother in a group called the Mystic that played the Ebony Club. And just a bunch of these people I met at the Ebony Club.
I want to ask you, Dana. I appreciate that, but I want to ask you about two other cats before we end this.
Okay.
And Roger Troutman and Byron Bird.
Okay.
Did you know those guys?
Byron Bird. See, there's a thing that the Ohio Players and Son and stuff. You go back and you can watch it from these various groups, but the group that spawned the younger cats in Ohio Players and all of the cats in Dayton and Son comes from this group called the Majestic. One of our teachers at Rolf, Big Jim Caldwell, was their manager. So we would rehearse over there, and sometimes in some of the singing groups, if we were out with the bands, Byron and them would play behind. Byron and Marvin and Chet and Diamond. Before they were Chet, when Chet was Clarence and Diamond was Jimmy, and Marvin and Merv was Marvin. They were the Majestics. And they were a major band that played behind a lot of people and did their own thing back in Ohio, back in Dayton. So yeah, I knew them all back then. And who knew where things were to go from there. So at one point, three of them they turned it into Overnight Low, I think, and then three of them joined the Ohio Players, and Byron. There actually was no Son at first, really. There was Byron and some cats and Roger Troutman, and they made a record. Then it turned into Son. But the other cats, Chris and them, made a group called Dayton, right? So you had Dayton and Son and the Ohio Players all coming out of the Majestic. So they were all a little older and all mentors. I learned. I think the first time I know Marvin turned me on to. I heard Blood, Sweat, and Tears had been out before, and so I had heard, Spinning Wheel and all that. Floyd and them even stuck it. But the first time I heard Blood, Sweat, and Tears 3, which really was an influence on me because they really that was really an album where I heard people do a bunch of different things that I didn't know one band could do. And Marvin brought that album to rehearsal. And, I mean, if you listen, go back and listen to that album, you can hear some stuff on some Ohio Player stuff that came from Blood, Sweat, and Tears 3, because Marvin was really into that album. So you can hear some stuff. So that was my first experience with Byron Berg. Plus, when we would come back to Ohio in '75, Byron and Kim Yancey, who also I grew up with in elementary school, would book up around the tri-state area. Kim I lived on Oak Ridge. If you turn the corner, the next block up, Kim Yancey lived there right across from my elementary school. He lived right across from me. So again, I grew up with him, saw him every day in the summer and school. Roger Troutman was a little older and way far more advanced. So I saw him on television, like Swim and Swing, whatever these different shows were in Dayton. But I didn't meet him until years later, till we were in Lakeside. I didn't meet him until then, but I saw him and looked up to him because he was always so innovative. Before the talk box, he played through a Leslie, like an organ speaker. He played through a Leslie. He was always doing something. So they were Little Roger and the Veils. There were all kinds of different names, and stuff. So that I watched him come.
He was Roger in the Human Body at one point, right?
Roger in the Human Body, Little Roger and the Veils, all kinds of different stuff. So I would see him on these Saturday TV shows, and thought, damn, this cat is out there, But I never met him officially until Lakeside, much later. I don't know why. I mean, I was at concerts and stuff when he was there with Slave, when I would go see Slave stuff when they would come out. But I for some reason, we never crossed paths. I would see everybody in the account, Johnny Wilder and all them, but I never Roger for some reason.
Well,
They played so many gigs that maybe they left immediately. It might have been that. He might have played a gig in LA and left before I could even meet him to do it. Because when we were doing with him, they were doing 3 gigs a day sometimes.
Yeah, Kim's been on the show. Byron I've been talking to forever. I'm trying to get him to come on the show. He's still around,
Yeah, man, he's always industrious, but never know what never know what he's going to do. Not in a sort of version of Satch or anything, but still just one of those guys you never knew, what. But they were always finding ways to make deals and stuff. Always somehow. Byron was always as much a businessman as a musician. He could always find, you know what I mean? He knew how to talk to executives and stuff and talk them into stuff. So the gift of gab, I guess, is part of it,
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how Satch pulled that off, because he, in talking to Satch, I never really understand how he pulled off all that he did. I would talk to him. It's like, he was so street. It's like Byron Bird is really articulate and I mean, he's that kind of cat that's like scholarly, what I mean? So you can understand how he pulls the stuff off. I never understood how Satch talked business people into doing stuff. I never figured that out. Byron and Kim were always really, the businessman thing. I mean, far back as you want to go, they were always there. So,
Yeah, Satch was more like from the James Brown vibe or something, the way he would work those deals.
But he always could make deals happen.
Yeah.
Him and Boobie Cochran were always able to get deals done. So Dayton had a lot. I mean, there's a lot. Dayton, besides just musicians, there's a lot of parents and managers. There's a lot of people behind the scenes who had a lot to do, who need credit for a lot of stuff. Who never, Jim Caldwell's one that seriously needs some credit for a lot. I mean, he taught a lot of people in Dayton. Maybe not the Ohio Players, but almost everybody else beside them, professionalism. You know what I mean? Not just get a gig but tried to talk us, even though he wasn't going to be there, into acting like adults when he sent us out of town. You know what I mean? So, and he believed in everybody. You know what I mean? Because there was times where people to a lot of parents, it was just a joke. I think they're not going to do anything. But he believed that we could, And then, but there was parents in the bands that, like Rock's mother. I mean, we couldn't have sounded good at first. You know what I mean? So it was just noise they were putting up with at first. You know, nobody sounds good at first. So they put up with that. You know, Mike Green's parents and Almond's parents, you know, Curdy's mom. I mean, they let us be in their basement, just going at it for hours, you know. And so and would do ever you know, would help otherwise. It would try to stay out of it, but if something you needed a little extra to get a van to go to a gig or something, you know what I mean? They were parents that really put into us. And there's a lot of people like that just get lost in that story.
Sure.
You know, that really helped it. A lot of people who weren't ready to be managers but tried their best. You know, I mean, they didn't know the business. All they were really good for was getting a PA system and a van or something. But they deserve their part of the story because they, a lot of people taught us stuff. People who weren't in bands even who taught us stuff, showmanship stuff. You know, there was a lot of talented people who didn't have the type of talent that was going to make them anything, you know, but that you learned a lot from in Dayton and stuff. Dayton was really a great school. I just found out, you know, in doing some research when I was trying to get a documentary done, that the Legionnaires, like a gospel group, they were the first from Dayton. They were the first ones to be on major network TV, you know, a gospel group from Dayton. I didn't know that. All of this stuff that went on, you know, a lot of stuff, you just, when you're a kid, you know, it's not important. It's old people, you know what I mean? Even if
Right.
3 or 4 or 5 years older than you, they're like,
I know.
they play blues or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, later on, I end up loving blues and Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf
Sure.
and all this. But then I didn't.
Yeah.
And then it was old people music. You know, I'm the only person blues back then, and only because I didn't know he was blues, was Slim Harpo, Scratch My Back, because that was a hit. I probably wouldn't have liked it if I had known he was blues. I didn't know he was blues. You know, it's like, you know, but there was old people. It wasn't until later, you know, I learned that when I got ill this last time, which I was almost bedridden for close to 25 years, and I just did stuff that I couldn't do coming up. I studied stuff. Ken Burns Jazz came out, really changed my life. Because I studied all of those and I'd already been studying blues and documentaries, but Ken Burns went back deeper, further in the blues, even in the blues documentaries. And he went back to Field Hollers and when they first brought us off the ship and why we didn't have drums, all of that stuff. And I got an appreciation of Louis Armstrong that I never had. I always thought he was an Uncle Tom. Didn't know that none of us would be singing or playing the way that we are if it wasn't for him. He changed instrumental and vocal music. I think he may be the only person in the history of music that changed both vocal and instrumental music at the same time. I think he may be the only person that's ever done that. All I knew was Hello Dolly. I didn't know the Hot Five.
You got to get that context to really appreciate the impact of a lot of these greats.
And, you know, and even when I listened to the stuff that I hadn't heard before, as great as it was, it really didn't hit me how great he was until I put myself in the place of those people at that time. I said, okay, wait a minute. I've heard everybody. Coltrane, Bird, up to Eddie Van Halen and Steve Vai and all. You know, I mean, I've heard everything that almost can be done with an instrument. So I'm kind of jaded. Not really, because I'm excited about it, but then I thought about it. In the 20s, jazz was an ensemble music. Louis Armstrong stepped out front and started playing those scales and modes and said nobody had done that before. That's why they thought he was a mutant. And when I put myself in that frame of mind, I've heard nothing but people playing New Orleans, you know, and that. Have you ever heard West End blues?
West End blues?
Yeah, it's a King Oliver tune that Louis Armstrong redid called West End Blues. He plays
West End. Okay.
West End Blues. He plays this bit in the front before the band comes in, and he does about everything you can do in every and even different time signatures before the band comes in. You figure, I don't know what else you can do in music that he didn't do just in the beginning of this song. And I think, you know, I listen to that, and I think about the fact, okay, I'm in the 20s and I've never heard anybody do this stuff before. The closest anybody's heard of anybody doing anything like this is some classical violinist. You know what I mean? That's the closest we've heard to anybody doing anything like this. And this little country boy doing this, it's like, where did he get that from? It's like what Marcella said. He's touched by God, gave him a light. You know what I mean? Because how could he do that?
Yeah.
I saw these interviews on these other musicians, and this one musician said, he said, now you go back, you listen to all these trumpet players, and you hear them hit these high notes, and they're screeching up there, these high notes. He said, now think about this. Louis played up there. I had never really thought of. I had to go back and listen again. He wasn't screeching these high notes. He was comfortable playing in those registers, everything that he was doing. He's a mutant, man. He's an alien.
There's a lot of musicians that you really have to take them in their time and know the history. Yeah.
The stuff that Charlie Parker played, you have to think about it. All of those guys that came about that same time, him and Dizzy, Thelonious Monk, Mingus, they were aliens because even other musicians couldn't get to them. They thought what they were playing was so out originally. You know what I mean? Eventually, everybody tried to be them, but initially, most cats couldn't figure out what they were doing. And Charlie Parker was sitting up washing dishes, listening to some keyboard player, just to be around it, and a light bulb came over his head, thinking, I don't have to play the melody. I can play anything inside of the scales that's going on as long as I resolve. And it changed music. I don't know why nobody else thought of that before him. I don't know. He could already play super fast. But once he decided, I don't have to play the melody and I can play super fast, I can play anything I want, people just shook their head.
That's why so many greats initially are dismissed by the critics because it's so innovative.
So far behind what they're used to hearing and stuff. So I never imagined that Louis Armstrong, could have been that, because by the time I heard him, he was just mostly singing stuff and play. He would play a bit, and what he was playing would sound great, but it wasn't the stuff that's. If you get a chance, go back and listen on the. They're called Louis Armstrong and the Hot Fives and Hot Sevens. Man, he's playing as much trumpet player as anybody on earth could ever play, even now.
Very cool.
I mean, I never knew that. So I studied all that stuff. That's when I got really even more into Robin Ford. I got into what the notes are and why, and chords and why, why. I knew through my ears and singing and stuff how to sing at just about anything, but I didn't know what to call it or why it was called that, and why. Once I got that reference, because in choir we had that, but we didn't think we needed it, so we kicked it all to the curb. We get a record, do gigs. You know what I mean? We had 5 years of music in school that we dismissed as soon as we graduated. It's a shame. If I had known then what I know now, I would have kept that and used it. But I just pushed all that aside and stuff. So it's all useful to me now. But I got ill again for the second time. When I left Lakeside, and this time it lasted a really long time. So I had a long time to sit, not being able to move and just watch TV, videos and read and see where everything came from. I went all the way back in everything.
I'm so glad you're better now. I mean, you look and seem good, and I came
out with a medication called Humira, and I give myself these injections. I get a little bit better and a little bit better every 2 weeks. So it's been maybe 6 years or 7 years or so that I've been getting better. But prior to that, bed to the computer to the couch. That was it. Just aching, and I would get so tight that I used to make fun of Joe Cocker, but I would do that without trying to. I would just get so tight. The closest thing I can think of is like, remember those airplanes that we used to get?
The rubber bands?
Yeah, with the rubber band.
And the propeller, yeah.
That I would feel like I had twisted the propeller all the way up, and then I let it go. That's how my spine, because it's in my spine. So, but, again, even with all the pain, I have to think I really got something out of it. You know what I mean? Something that I never would have taken the time before. I have all this appreciation of people who came before, what they gave to us. I mean, not only did they give this music, think about it. Louis and those guys, not only they had to worry about being lynched every day. Forget the music. They came up with this genius music while having to be lynched. Parker was a junkie. He played all night, had kids, and had to go around figuring out how to get the money for the junk. He led 3 lives and still created this music. There was most of us are still trying to figure out how do you do that. Disney was the only one sane out of all of them. Because Thelonious Monk and what's the other keyboard player? I can't. Bud Powell. They both, mental illness. You know what I mean? And Mingus as well ended up being mentally ill. So Kenny Clark, I guess he was okay. I mean, he changed the beat. Everybody was 4 on the floor all the time until him. He was the first drummer that played the different kick drum rhythms. Keeping the beat on the hi-hat, but first he was the first one to do that. And Disney, he was the only one. Him and Kenny, I guess, were the only ones that would completely sing, because he was a great educator, with people, and stuff. But even he had to go through his thing because he was playing incorrectly. So wore the muscles out in his jaws. That's why his face did that. He played incorrectly. So after a while, he couldn't even play like he used to, because his jaws couldn't and neck couldn't handle. You know what I mean? You couldn't get what he used to get out of it. But those guys were brilliant in the way that they thought. Monk hated the temperate system, so he would play notes next to each other, which you weren't supposed to emulate notes that we didn't have on the piano, because Middle Eastern, they have all those quarter tones and stuff that we don't have in our music. So he used to get pissed off about that and would play notes side by side to make a harmonic come off. That was a note that he couldn't get on the piano. And He was.
Dana, man, I love talking music, but I'm gonna have to roll, man.
Okay.
We've been 3 hours, but I'd love to talk to you again.
You can do it again, if you want to, because it's like, again, it's endless. Just what I was able to learn through other people.
Thank you so much for doing this. It was great to meet you and get to know you. And, I hope we'll continue our dialogue and relationship. And
definitely going to dig into this.
All right. Yeah. Give me some feedback. Dana,
Okay.
man, take care. Talk soon.
I can talk to you soon now.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Truth in Rhythm. A big thank you goes out to our guest as well as to you, the viewer and listener. Also, much gratitude to Pleasure for supplying the show's funky opening and closing music. As a reminder, you can always access the complete list of linked shows by episode at funkandstuff.net. I urge you to support this program and receive the extra benefits along with that by subscribing to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube and sharing it with funk, R&B, and jazz lovers, joining Truth and Rhythm's membership program at Patreon, submitting a donation at funkandstuff.net, buying Everything is on the One, the First Guide to Funk book at Amazon, shopping at the Funky Things store for cool merchandise at funkandstuff.net, and linking through funkandstuff.net for all of your Amazon purchases. In addition, if you're an artist or anyone seeking proven, results-oriented professional marketing, PR, writing, or editing consultation or production, check out the media services section at funkandstuff.net. Also, I encourage you to drop me a line at scottg@funkandstuff.net. I love the feedback, suggestions, guest requests, appearance and sponsorship inquiries, and just talking about my favorite subject, groove-based music. For now, and as always, this is Scott Dr. GX Goldfine saying, keep on vibing to the rhythm of the one.